So I just love cucumbers. That's a big thing. Like cucumber sandwiches and like grating them into stuff and gin and tonics and the whole thing. Um, and I have a teeny tiny greenhouse in the summer outside, and I found these mini munchers through Vessie's seeds, and I started them last year, and they just were bananas. Like they were so happy and they produced so many cucumbers. And I saved one seed because I knew that my unit was coming because I was on the Kickstarter in March. So I was like planning. So I saved one of the seeds to do in the tower. So yeah, I have the tower, not the, what's the other one?
The garden.
Um, yeah. So I have the tall guy. Um, and so this pack of seeds I got, it only had 5 seeds, and they were like super precious. And I saved the one for the tower. And I just wanted to see if it would work. Because, like it's pitched as like leafy greens do best and all this stuff. But I'm not a huge rule follower with gardening. Like I
Love
prefer to
it.
be like, yeah, let's see what happens, right? Like, what's the worst? You lose a seed, but you learn something, and then if it works, then you get to eat stuff. Like, it's really a win-win. Yeah.
100%.
So I started it with everything else, and so that was like the third week of January, and it just took off, and I was like, "Whoa, you were a happy cucumber." It was just like I pulled it out. I have a picture of it on my treadmill. It spread the whole thing out after like 2 weeks to do a root trim, and it was just exploding. So I thought very highly of myself at that point because I'm like, I'm winning with the cucumbers. Everything's going to be okay. But it wasn't. I had to learn like some really tough stuff, which is why probably a lot of people are asking. Because you gotta like be mean to your cucumbers. You gotta just like cut off so much and be a big jerk and discipline them so much if you want the fruit to actually set. Um, yeah, so for me, it was probably 3 weeks in that we were getting like, I think I counted like 100 little babies. Like it was loaded with baby cucumbers. And so I was sending pictures to my family, like proud plant mom, I'm gonna have all these cucumbers. And then they just started shriveling up and just dropping and dying. And so I started just doing a bit more reading and research and started being really ruthless and cutting off a lot of the side runners, and clipping a lot of the babies. Like if you see like a group of like 5, leaving like one, which breaks your heart because you're like, so sorry, like you're not going to make it, cucumber
And
baby.
just for like, is it 5 like flowers that like if you see 5
Yeah,
flowers? Okay, yeah. Just like for
that's a
yeah.
good question. Yeah, this type, the mini munchers are like I highly, highly, highly recommend them. They're what's the word? Parthenocarpic. They only produce females. And so there's no male blossoms. So every flower comes with a little cucumber baby. And like it's just so great. You don't have to worry about pollination, and it just seems less wasteful. And it's really positive feedback as a gardener to see like so much potential, to be like, wow, there's a lot there. Yeah, so all the blossoms are female, all of them have potential. And so it's a bit tougher to cut them off, right? Because in your head, you're like, okay, I'm destroying my harvest. I'm taking like 75% of my veggies here, but really you're making it possible for the other ones to set. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I have
Um,
like, sorry, I have a couple questions of just what you said
or I get
before
rolling and
is
then I'm like,
no, it's all like amazing. And so with the runners, I know like some people don't understand like what like runners
yeah.
like possibly. So can you kind of explain that like how you picked
Oh,
like what
yeah.
to prune and how you picked that?
Yeah, for sure. So my plant started off with a main stalk, and I let it go all the way up to the top. And like I was at the bottom of the 4 tier, and it's right now it's past the top. And it started making side runners, and I like meaning that vines coming from that main stalk and then stalks coming from those vines until it looks like just a jungle wall, which is gorgeous. But it's just eating everything up. And so for our gardeners, we need to kind of evaluate like, hey, what's my main stock? Kind of like choose, because there's a lot of freedom in gardening, right? Be like, okay, I want this to be my main producer. I'm gonna like love that one. And then for me, I've allowed like I think now there's 3 other side shoots I've allowed from it. and everything I'm either pinching or cutting with scissors right off. That said, some of them are getting a bit older. And so like this week, I'm going to cut back some of the older ones because it's like they're like 6 weeks or whatever, and let some of the newer ones take off. Because I think there's about 40 ready to roll right there. Like I'll be harvesting like 5 this weekend, and there's like a whole bunch of other ones just ready to get plump and happy. So
Crazy.
yeah.
And then the second one is for roots. So like when you trimmed them, like how often did you trim them? Like, can you take us through that process of how you did?
Yeah. Root trimming, it's so neat. And it's such a neat metaphor for life too, right? There's always talk about like trimming the vines and the branches and all the top work, but like the roots, you gotta be pretty like disciplined with them. I've kept it to, I think about every 2 weeks. I take the whole cup out, and you gotta be gentle because they really get going. But I pull like the whole thing out and just either lay it on the floor or hold it up, and I take about 2/3 off. The first time I had about, I don't know, 3 feet of roots, like they were just everywhere. It was out of control. So I leave about that much, enough so it can kind of go into the channel, but that I won't clog it. So probably like like 3 inches each way, kind of like it letting it go in there, so it's getting all that nutrient flow, but that it's not blocking things, and that it won't get so tangled that it causes harm or shock next time.
Yeah.
I think if anyone skips the root trimming, it's just not going to work out in the end. And you just gotta be like, well, it's too much work, or it's too scary, or it's like you gotta risk it, or you're not gonna have your plant in the end, and it's gonna damage the other plants, and it's gonna bog down the whole system. On the cucumber vines, I know a lot of people get concerned about the appearances of nutrient burn, or like my leaves look bad or sad or whatever. And for me, like, I don't care. I'm just like, okay, today you're an ugly cucumber. Let's trim and cut. And so every few days, like I would say every 3 days at least, I go in there with scissors, and if they're getting crispy, if they're getting too spotted, they're out. They just got to go. And it makes it, right? Like you're going to have some crispy leaves. You're going to have some with spots. You're going to have some that are yellow. You're going to have some that are ugly. And then you're going to have some that are like all big and happy. And then a week later, they'll be spotted and crispy too. Like it kind of comes and goes, and that's okay, right? Like it's just letting the plant have a little bit of grace to do its thing and to find its nutrients. And I think they age a bit faster, right? They're growing faster, they're producing more, they're happy, but they've got a lot going on in a shorter time than, our outdoor cucumbers who are just laying around in the sun all day. And yeah, so just kind of treating them with like being like, okay, it's okay to cut things, and it's okay to let them have a bad day. I kind of personify my plants a little bit, but
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And saying that is, so I have a few with the light cycle. Did you have it consistent throughout the whole entire growing cycle, or did you break it up?
I left it as is for the starting. I think we started with like your recommended one, like I think the 16/8, like the initial grow. Because I only have one tower right now, and I really want two. I need two at least, or four. But I still have lettuce and stuff, and I'm always starting other things in there. So I wanted to give them that boost since they weren't with the different nutrients. I wanted them to at least have more light, and it's worked. I think if I had one consistent one that was more, fruiting and the 12 and 12 lights, it would probably be better for the fruit. And if the others was more just the grow, would be better for that. But it's one of the perks of this unit is that you can find that medium and just let it be in that space, kind of giving a nod to both. And it works.
And nutrients, what? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I don't like persnickety stuff. Like I set my timer and I figured out the little pins to poke and stuff. And I was like, I don't want to mess with that. I like kind of letting it roll. So yeah.
Especially if it's working. It's like, yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
It's not broken. I'm not going to touch it.
Exactly. Yeah. With the nutrients, I've followed so I use the stuff you guys sent, and once it got down to the like flowering and ripening, I just hit up that ratio and I just follow it with the little cup. I don't syringe it or anything. I have a big 15-liter jug, and I just use our tap water. I put the nutrients in and I dump it in, and I have to fill it. I top up 15 liters and nutrients once a week.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thirsty little plants.
they are thirsty. Like right now, I could hear it, and it's like starting to, you can hear the pump kind of like change a bit. I'm like, okay, it's time. Yeah, but yeah, they gobble up a lot of water, and that's something to think about, right? If you're looking ahead, and if you're someone who's really committed to just like using distilled or something, like that'll be more costly. But with me, I'm just going for the tap, and so far it's working. And I think like a huge nod to the nutrients you've used. They're the best ones I've ever used. So it's really nice that they have that pH buffer, and they're just really effective. Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
guess like
Yeah.
do you use a trellis for your cucumbers? And
Oh
if
yeah, that's
so,
a good question.
okay, yeah.
I didn't think, well, I kind of thought I would need one, but I didn't realize how quickly I would, like how swiftly they would grow and how enthusiastic they would be for climbing. And in my head, I kind of thought I would just like wrap them around the posts, and that just doesn't work. So I had to go out in my yard and like chip away at ice and snow. And I just found these two metal ones I just had in the garden. They're like a 3-branch metal one. You can get them at any hardware store for like 20 bucks. I think ideally, I would like to bring in like a light plastic, like a closer crisscross one. And even like adding magnets, like magnets on the lattice and magnets on the tower, so they're kind of like clip on, could be really fun. Right now I have them tied with like twine and stuff, so it's not that pretty. But the plants like it. So yeah,
That's all that matters.
right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I guess like how long from like seed to flower did it take? And then like flower to fruit
Yeah.
for like now you're eating, like what's like the time frame that you had with those?
Yeah. Seed to flower was 3 weeks. And by flower, I mean like that explosion of tons of female fruit. And then it was that long chunk. I think it was about 6 weeks, which it just felt longer seeing so many cucumbers die, right?
Yeah.
Um, you're like, oh man. Yeah, so that was longer. It was about 6 weeks. And then finally like realizing, okay, trim and discipline and do this and do that. And now we're in the flow. Like now we have constant ripening happening. And they're really tasty too. Like the skin is thin and it's juicy and it's flavorful. And my kids keep stealing them. And yeah, I need them to leave me some. I've also actually started another, I can't remember the name. Some of my seeds got mixed up, but it's an English type, and it's taking off now. And knowing what I've learned with the mini munchers, I've done the same, like way more discipline. And I've got like 5 that are setting up. And so I think like in about 2 weeks, I'll be posting some like pretty big English cukes from there. So
Oh,
it's
that's gonna be
gonna, if it
awesome.
works, it's gonna be just glorious. Yeah, they look really nice so far. So here's hoping.
And then I guess like kind of what's the most challenging part or like that like growing cucumbers or starting off like that you'd want to tell people, but like do this. If you had to do anything,
Yeah,
this is what you have to do.
yeah. Something I do with cukes and any like more tenders like tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, I start them warm. I didn't put them right into the system. I started them separately on a warming pad in the plug, just to give them that strong, quick germination, because I didn't want to risk them rotting or anything. Um, and then the other thing is be willing to sacrifice the plant for the fruit. Like be thoughtful, look ahead and be like, hey, if I can keep this trimmed and if I can keep up with it, it's gonna be worth it, even though, it feels sad at the time. Yeah. And trim the roots. That too. Yeah.
And I guess so. It sounds like you kind of have a routine once the plant is established. You're saying like you'll go after, I think it was 2 weeks, you'll pull out everything, you trim the roots. I guess what is that routine, just so kind of people would kind of see, hey, once you get to this point, you can do this and just kind of
Yeah.
get this steady harvest.
For me, it's been helpful to kind of have in my head that like weekends, like Saturday or Sunday is a plant day, just so I don't miss out on the maintenance. And so that's been my routine, like to go in with scissors and with a cloth and like wipe everything down and trim everything up and kind of give it a tidy, and then be sure everything's topped up. I haven't done a full clean yet. I'm actually really intimidated by taking it apart right now, just because all the plants they're just huge and they're doing so well. So that is something I'll need to figure out, and I might do a transition in May or something. I'm just kind of avoiding it right now. But I think it would be helpful to figure out a routine there. Yeah. But that's the big thing. Like on weekends, maybe nothing needs to be done, but it's a good time to be like, hey, is everyone healthy? Checking the lights, like, okay, if this is this close, it's time to, pick the kale and cut back the basil and all that.
Okay, that's good.
And I like just for the people that are more like like they want like definitive, it's like, so when your roots, is there a specific, there's a few things. So with the roots, is there a specific length that you decide like, okay, like I'm gonna let them grow like here, or is it every week that you trim them? And then I'll let you answer that. And then,
Right. No, it's sometimes hard to be like definitive with gardening, right? Because we're working with living things and sometimes they have a mind of their own, and it can like I think we lean towards wanting like this is the schedule and this is what you do, and that's good, but to also like learn to flow with the system as well. So I guess the main marker points I watch for are like being sure there's always a few inches from the lights for any plant, regardless. And for the cucumbers, just going in, like, it's easy to give a quick glance, but going in and being like, okay, like, can I actually follow this vine somewhere, or does it need to go? Like, am I keeping to my 3 vines? Do I see clusters of fruit? Some need to go. And then being willing to say, okay, I know it's busy or whatever, but I'm going to take out each cup and trim the roots because they grow faster than I think. And just even making, like, for someone who needs a checklist more, posting a checklist, like make a checklist on a marker board or laminate it or something. So if it gets wet, it's okay. And just make those steps, like trim roots, check on fruit clusters, check distance from lights, check water level. And if you can get that routine into your head, then you'll give space to flex and flow and have a bit more fun with it. Because there is a happy medium between, like, follow the science, follow the routine, know the system, but then you want to like bring the joy too and be like, oh wow, I didn't expect that. Like, look what is happening. And yeah.
Right. The
I don't know if
flexibility
that
to
totally answered
experiment.
the question.
yeah, no, that was like
Yeah.
perfect. And then I guess like going off of that is like a big thing is like you're saying like these fruit clusters.
Yeah.
So when you come by them, is it just like going, like you're like mentioning going with the flow? Do you
Yeah.
just kind of mini mow it, or is there like a way to pick it? Like, yeah, and I guess like with that, it's like, do you pick all but one, and how do you determine what ones to keep?
Yeah, that's a great question. I look for the healthiest one because sometimes like there's like a whole like ball of them. There's like 5 little cucumbers ready to roll. And some of them you can tell they'll have like a bit of yellowing already on the blossom end, or they look a bit thinner. So I always try to aim for the largest one, or even the 2 largest ones, like let them be, and then just pinch off the other ones. If I've missed some and they're getting a bit bigger, I kind of like, it's tough, it'd be like, you might make it, but still trying to make that choice and be like, okay, you got to go. And then, yeah, I kind of wonder if there's a way to still use them, like toss a bunch of them into a smoothie or something. Cause they're still like an inch long or something. They smell like cucumbers, or yeah, there's probably a way to use them, but.
And then I guess like with that is, when with the clusters or whatever, how do you know how much like cucumbers per plant? Like, is there a maximum amount of cucumbers that you want growing at a time? Or is it just like, hey, there's a cluster, I would just want one of that cucumber of that cluster, and I can have like a whole bunch?
No, I think it's best to keep to the 1 per cluster. if able, but also being aware of how your plant unfurls too. And this is something different cucumber vines. Like sometimes you'll think it's just a cluster. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's actually a tendril, like a vine wrapped up. And so if there's potential, like if you want that to be your vine and it's going to unfurl and keep growing, then be gentle, be aware that that's actually a lot more there. He's just curled up. But then there's other ones that's just kind of the end of a stalk, right? It's like the end of it, and there's like 5 cucumbers coming out. Well, then just leave the one. And that's something more as you get to know your plant and the type you have that you'll see it. But it is neat, like they will like just like spiral up and be all like ready. And so if that looks like it's gonna unfurl, then you might need to give it some time, and you might lose some baby cucumbers in the midst as they abort. But it depends if you're wanting that stalk to grow, then it's going to have to take some growth time. But if you want that just to be that zone of a cucumber, then the other's got to go. And I think that's part of it too, always keeping in mind, like there is a time just for the stalk to grow. There is a time for that, and that you're gonna lose some, and that's okay, because 2 weeks from there, you're gonna have this established stalk, and then you can start, thinning out the fruit more. And just giving that time. Yeah. I don't know, maybe others are better at this, but I don't know if it's possible to grow cucumbers well in this system, to let them grow the stalks without losing some on the way while it establishes itself. And that's not a failure. That's just the process.
Yeah, well, and I feel like even in like soil and that, it's like there's gonna be some sacrifice.
Yeah, yeah. It's just part of the way.
Yeah, you're not
Yeah.
gonna be able to save 100% of them.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, oh, sorry.
Well, and just within that too, just watching for those leaves, like as they're shifting, like it is still possible for disease and stuff. So if you start to see kind of the more mildewy type, get those out of there right away. It's better to have less leaves in the healthier plant than for it to get overloaded. I think that's been a huge part of my success, is just getting those leaves out like all the time. And it's okay if you have a pile of dead leaves and you're chucking them, that's okay.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's good to know, because I know a lot of people like where you feel bad, the plant, and
Right.
you want
Yeah.
you want to make, you don't want to take anything from it, so it's just like,
Yeah.
oh no. And it's
Yeah.
nice to know that it's natural.
I was kind of curious as far as the location of your tower. Is it in a sunroom? Is it in front of a window, or is it,
Oh, yeah.
in a dark place? And yeah.
That's a great question. Right now I'm in my studio. It's all light and plants, and I've got like fig trees growing and everything. But I have very curious cats, and there was no way I could have it accessible to them, because it seemed like the tower was going to be a bit more prone to tip if I didn't have it attached. So it's in my garage, which is no longer a garage. Our garage is like a fitness room and a plant room. And so there's no windows, there's no natural light. It's super basic. I got a big, like a piece of plywood that I put it on, because I remember you guys mentioning, like, if it's in a basement or on concrete, just to be aware of temperature. So I have it on like a wood plank for that reason. And that's it. It's just, I have it next to a laundry sink, so it's really easy to fill up the water and dump it. And I would recommend that if you're gonna like haul water to it, you might fall behind on watering it because it takes more work. But yeah, it's just in a dark room. The lights do all the work. The cats want to eat it still, but they don't. And it's working well. Yeah.
And I guess like kind of like summing it all up, I guess we're kind of so is this your first time like growing indoors with a hydroponic system? Have you had experience? And if like, and in saying that, what advice would you give people just starting off in hydroponics?
Yeah.
In indoor grow? Yeah.
Oh man, I have a lot of advice here. I've been a gardener in general for like ever. I adore plants and gardening and getting out there. And I did get a different unit from a different company, and I want to be careful not to name them because they're a great company, but it was a different unit that looked really, really good. Like it's like a fine piece of furniture. And I was very excited about that. And it took off, but it didn't hit the notes I was looking for, as far as like the big greens, and like you could do basil well and cilantro well, but not like heads of lettuce, kind of stuff. And so it looked really good, but I wanted something more. And so when your Kickstarter came up, I was like, this looks amazing. And I think one of the comments I made initially to you guys was like, are those real? Like, is that lettuce real? Because it didn't seem possible that you could have a system where you could actually get like a solid head of lettuce, that you could actually grow that size and in that time. So I was like super skeptical. And then I went in because I was like, okay, I have 3 boys. They are eating me out of the house, and we're trying to be healthy. We're a healthcare family. And I just wanted, between budget and happiness, like there's got to be a way, So yeah, so always gardened, have experimented with hydroponics, and then landed with you guys. Um, I think there's a lot new gardeners should know that, how do I say this? Like to be curious. Like this isn't like a be all end all success thing. Like it's not a measure of who you are as a gardener, as a person, or as a mom, or anything like that. Like it's worth just trying it. It's a very gracious system. Like you can make mistakes and it's okay. If it doesn't work, try again. Um, and try everything. Like the joy of gardening, whether it's outside or with hydroponics, is that like if you fail, you're still winning because you just learned something new about yourself and about the world and about plants and about food. And really it's 30 days. Like you took 30 days to learn something, now you get to grow something else. And yeah, so I think that like the approach in it, like just to be open and to see it as an adventure, and then to invite your family. Like I'm a family person, so whether you have with a roommate or a community or a family, like make it a thing. Like everyone can choose a layer, and you choose kale, I'll choose lettuce. Let's see who wins. Like make it something that you're engaging in and that you have goals like, okay, well, 4 weeks from now, we're going to have a salad supper. I'm going to invite friends over, and just taking the approach that it's okay to learn and it's okay to explore. Another big thing that like I had to evaluate was the money, right? It's a pretty pricey system. And I think if people kind of evaluate like, well, what am I getting fully? So I could get around the same range for an espresso machine, like that's about the same range, or an outdoor greenhouse is going to be about 4 times as much. Just kind of look at all the options and then look at your household. Be like, hey, is the cost value worth it? Like, what do I get? Well, it's not just food. For me, within like living in the dark of Alberta winter for a spring that's never coming, right. It's a huge joy, and it's a huge mental health boost to go in and see living things and to trim stuff, and you're smelling fresh basil, you're eating fresh lettuce, you've got the lights. I like it'd be an interesting study on seasonal affective disorder. Like, does it connect to that? Does it give a boost to that? Can this lessen your therapy costs? I don't know. Like there's more benefits, right? Like see it as a holistic project that, yeah, it's food, but it's happiness too. And I think that's a big part of it. And then another big thing too, if you're an educator, if you have a classroom, or if you're a home educator, like we're a home educating family, and we were able to use part of our science funding to tap in for this. And that is an option with most school boards that I think every family in Alberta should know, that if you like write into your program plan, like hydroponics, nutrition, health, blah, 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 great, you got some funding for it. So use it. Or even at your business, or if you have an office space, like people will walk in to your coffee shop or to your accounting place and be like, you're growing food in your waiting area? Like, that's cool, right? Like everyone likes to see something alive, especially in winter. Like give us a hint of life, give us something to eat. That works. That's what
It's funny. It's almost like a moth to flame, where we like when we were doing
I think
shows and that it's
that's
like
the
you
gist
you
of
just
it.
draw into it and you need to touch it.
Yeah.
And it's no, it's good. But no, that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And all of
Yeah.
it was just like, yeah, it was great. And we really, really appreciate it.